Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I've been offered a chair, but you can tell I've been at the bar for a long time. I don't mean the bar where I'd go and get a drink bar, but I mean a barrister for a long time, because the idea of sitting down when addressing people seems a bit strange, so I'm going to stay standing if that's all right. So I'll move on to the first slide. So that's me, Clare Wardell. A very good morning to you. I am a head of faculty at BPP, and before joining BPP in 2018, I was a criminal barrister practicing on the South Eastern Circuit for about 16 years. Now you're all thinking I don't look old enough to have been practicing, thank you. Anyway, my set, I'm now door tenant at Foundry Chambers, but just round the corner. There are lots of very good criminal sets of chambers, I should add. Okay. Anyway, a very, very warm welcome to you. And I'm hopefully going to help you now with a bit of guidance on how to obtain a pupillage. I didn't get pupillage first time round, so I'm a good example of somebody who can still get pupillage and practice at the bar. You've probably heard, and I'm going to go through in a moment, that pupillage is difficult to get, but I, along with lots of members of the bar, are good examples that if you don't get it first time round, that's not the end of the story. So look, so a few headlines for you. Why you need to stand out: building your CV, the application for pupillage, aligning yourself to what chambers want. Now that sounds obvious, doesn't it? But I'm going to come to that in a bit more detail later, because that is so important. And then displaying your advocacy and interview success, okay? So I'm going to rattle through these quite quickly because we've got quite a lot to get through, but if you've got any questions, you're welcome to come and ask me in due time. So why you need to stand out. Let's just look at the statistics, okay? Some headlines. There are less than 500 pupillages. Okay, and so the competition for places is intense, okay? And if we just look at some of those statistics, you will see how many people take the bar course and how many pupillages are offered, okay? You need to go into this with your eyes wide open, all right? That's a really important factor for you to take into account. So if you look, the number of pupillages offered is about 430 each year. Okay, over 3,000 individuals may apply for pupillage in any particular year. And some chambers may have over 100 applications for each pupillage placement. So go into it with your eyes wide open, but speaking from somebody who's been at the bar for many years, who loved it, if this is what you want to do, you just keep batting on to get there, to be honest. If I'd had £1 in the 1990s when I was an undergraduate, every time somebody said to me, as a girl from Dover, really, you're applying to be a barrister, it's very competitive, I wouldn't have bothered applying because I would have made rather a lot of money out of people's comments. So look, go into it with your eyes wide open, but if you want to go to the bar, whether it's the employed bar or the self-employed bar, keep going, okay? And what I'm going to be looking at with you this morning are the ways to really strengthen your application, okay? So let's just move on. Building a persuasive CV. Now, all of this, as by way of headlines, sounds really obvious, doesn't it? Well, of course I'm going to build a persuasive CV. But one of the things I want to start with, you'd be surprised how many times, for example, when I at BPP and other providers, I'm sure will do the same, run mock pupillage interviews, and I ask the question, why do you want to go to the bar, and why this set of chambers, that I've been looked at rather blankly. It's not because the person that I'm doing the mock interview with doesn't want to, but it's about persuading your pupillage panel through your CV and your experience that actually it is something that you want to do. So take it right back to basics, okay? You'll be thinking about lots of big questions like funding and where to study and what area of law, but go back to basics. So 12 compulsory qualifying sessions with your IN. Now, I don't know how many of you here have joined the INs. You might not have done. Some of you might have done. I'd encourage you to do that as soon as you can, okay? I'm a member of Gray's Inn, but Gray's Inn, Lincoln's Inn, Inner Temple, Middle Temple, they are all great. They all offer scholarships. They'll offer you support and mentoring. You will choose whichever inn is best for you, but in my view, do that research and they will offer your qualifying sessions, okay? And that is a really good way of building up your experience. It will also include dining in hall with members of the bar and members of the judiciary, okay? So really important for you to join that. There'll be residential training weekends, there'll be skills-based workshops, okay? So that's a really good headline. Ask your inn for a sponsor or mentor. So when I was in full-time practice at the bar, I was a mentor at Gray's Inn, and what's really invaluable about that is if you think, well, okay, actually, what's my intended practice area? They will pair you up with a mentor in that practice area who might be a member of the chambers that is around us at the moment, okay? Who will give up their time because they have been fortunate, like me, to have advice and guidance in preparation to become a member of the bar. They will give you invaluable guidance. So that, if I'm being honest, putting simply, is a complete no-brainer. Okay? Work experience. Now, lots of you will be doing well academically. You'll all be working really hard, okay? Your work experience is really important. My main tip here is to be a bit discerning about what work experience you do. The more work experience you have, the better, whether that's marshalling, whether it's pro bono work, whether it's volunteering in legal advice centres. But if there's a particular area of law you're interested in, focus on that area of law as well, okay? Try and be targeted in your work experience, okay? Pro bono opportunities. Now, obviously, I'm at BPP, so I can tell you about the pro bono opportunities with us, but there will be with other bar providers. Pro bono work is so valuable because it gives you that experience on your feet. So it might be in social security cases. There's FRU, which I'm sure a number of you have heard of. It's the opportunity to represent clients, okay? Pro bono work gives you an invaluable insight into the practicalities of being at the bar. And what does all of that do? It persuades the set of chambers you're applying to that you actually really want to do it, okay? And it follows as night follows day, doesn't it? Because it's so competitive, they're going to be wanting to see that this is something that you want to do, okay? So that, in my view, is a really important foundation for you to be starting off, and it's never too early to start off with really great work experience, okay? Right, so that's all the grounding, getting the advice from practice, from mentors, joining the inn, the qualifying sessions. Here are other examples. Well, you're achieving one of them right now, are you not? Because here you are, okay? The reason why these pupillage fairs are so great is because you'll have a number of academic providers here and also a number of sets of chambers, okay? When I applied for pupillage first time round, it was in fact in an area of law which I was interested in, but in fact I didn't end up practicing in. Okay? It would have served me well to be a bit more focused on the area of law I wanted to practice in. These fairs are great for that because you get first-hand experience of speaking to people from these sets of chambers. Okay? But mooting, let's go to that. Now, a number of you, I would imagine, are undergrads, and there will be mooting societies, I'm sure, at university. Get involved in that, because although advocacy in your bar course is different to mooting, mooting gives you the experience of being on your feet. It shows the people that you're applying to in terms of pupillage that you're taking it seriously. Your inns will also offer mooting. Okay, so really if you join an inn, you'll find those opportunities. Pupillage events, I'd really advise you to look at your area of practice and think, actually, what do I want to specialise in? Look at sets of chambers that specialise in that area. Now, obviously, what's great about the bar in this country is it can either be the self-employed bar, so you'll have the southeastern circuit, the northern circuit, depending on which area of the Midland circuit, depending on which area of the country that you live in. You do not have to be based in London. Okay, the bar is really strong outside London, okay? If you're international students, for example, you might study here, you might want to return to your own jurisdiction to practice, but all of the areas of specialism and the expertise you can develop here is really invaluable. Go to court. Now that sounds obvious, doesn't it? But go to court and see what it's like, okay? Whether it's in criminal practice, whether you want to go to the High Court, you can go to the Royal Courts of Justice, walk into reception and ask anybody there, okay, what's going on? I'm interested in a case in a particular area. They will signpost you in the right direction. Go and see, okay, what happens. If any of you are interested in criminal practice, you can go to a Crown Court and sit in the public gallery and watch what happens, okay? Get first-hand practice and then careers assistance. So whether that's at bar school, for example, when you're studying the BTC, us at BPP, we have a great careers service. The other bar providers will as well. At university, get some real advice from your careers team, okay? So this is another really good practical way of building your experience. And it'll also help you, because I know a number of you I've spoken to this morning don't really know what area of practice to go into. It's all very well thinking, well, I want to go to the bar, but actually, what's my area of specialism? That will all develop in the sense of coming to these fairs and speaking to people, okay? Right, so applying for pupillage itself. So you can apply before or during the bar programme, okay? You don't have to apply before, you can apply during the bar programme. And during the BTC, for example at BPP, I'm sure elsewhere, you can have mock pupillage interviews, you'll have pupil supervisors who can help you with your pupillage application. The applications through the Pupillage Gateway are in the new year. That will open, I think, in January or February time. So there's plenty of advice and guidance that you can get in making your application for pupillage. The advantage of applying for it before bar school, before the bar training course, I keep talking about it as bar school, that's what it was when I qualified, before you do the BTC, is by the time you start the course, guess what? You've got that in your back pocket. You don't have to think about making the application. But do not worry if you haven't got pupillage by the time you start the BTC. You will not be on your own, okay? Very many of you will be applying for pupillage at that point in time. And the Pupillage Gateway, take down a note of this website, this URL, if you haven't got it already, thepupillagegateway.com. That will give you real guidance about the application process. It's a little bit like applying for universities, okay? Right, so I'm just going to bring all of these up. Now, this is what we think chambers are interested in, okay? So let's go for any one of them. Analytical skills. That sort of speaks for itself, doesn't it? You know, you're going to be the expert in your particular area. You'll have a brief that arrives in my day, lever arch file after lever arch file after lever arch file. That doesn't happen anymore, mercifully, for the planet. Thousands of pages will arrive digitally. You need to analyse that and give advice. So think about your analytical skills, your attention to detail, okay? So your intellectual ability, all right? So all of those sort of what I would call academic skills. Really think about those skills. Let's move to others. So for example, if you want to be at the bar, self-employed bar or independent bar, you'll want to be on your feet, do you not? You want to be the one on your feet in front of the judge making the submissions. So this is about thinking and communicating under pressure, okay? That will develop with time, okay? Being articulate, both orally on your feet and in writing, okay? Being organised, all right? So that's then more about the being on your feet, presenting. And then we've got all these other really important skills, okay? Your commercial awareness, being really organised, being good with your time, being resilient. Being resilient doesn't mean being resilient at all costs, but you'll be someone who is, if you're here already, be determined. And that extra resilience, okay, will really help you along the way. Keen to undertake responsibility, well, I'm sure all of you, in whichever, whether that's in your personal life, in volunteering, in your academic side of things or your work life, will all be keen to do that because that'll be the thing that's driving you to be at the bar. So these are the sorts of things that chambers will want to see behind all that work experience. So when you're thinking about the skills that you want to demonstrate you've got, think of these, okay? Enthusiasm. Well, you'll all be enthusiastic in bucket loads, I'm sure. So some of you don't look quite so sure about that, but anyway, let's move. move on. Okay. Right, let's move to the interviews. Okay. So, there are normally 2 rounds. Okay. As a rule of thumb. What I would suggest you do is look at the particular chamber's website before you're applying to look for information about how their interviews are set up. Round 1, mock interviews. Practice, practice, practice. Not so that you're reading answers by rote, but I'm sure your BTC provider, as we do, will offer them. Do not allow yourself to be in a set of circumstances where the very first time, bless you, the very first time you're asked why these chambers is in the interview, okay? Because they want to offer you a pupillage because guess what? You're actually interested in that set. So make sure you understand the basics like what are their areas of specialism. It sounds obvious, doesn't it? But it's really, really important interview prep, okay? So practice before you go. They're normally 10 to 15 minutes, okay? And it's looking at your motivation for the bar, your interest in chambers, your competencies, all the sorts of some of the skills I was talking about before. Sometimes there is a problem question that you're given when you arrive. Okay? So the more that you can get used to looking at a factual scenario and trying to exercise that quick exercise of good judgment, that is going to stand you in good stead. Okay? And know your audience. I've already touched on this. Please, if there's nothing else you take down, either from this slide or this presentation, this is so important. If you're fortunate enough to have a number of interviews, there may be the sets of chambers you're applying may have broadly the same practice area, but may have particular specialisms. So, for example, what are the most recent big cases? I was about to say Queen's Counsel, King's Counsel, have just been involved in. Know what their areas are. If they've been involved in mediations or arbitrations or big Crown Court cases, what have they been? Okay? Why are you applying to them? Okay? Look at the profiles of their recent tenants. Go on the website. Look at what their juniors are involved in. Okay? Chambers' websites now are much more detailed than they were when I applied, but I'm not sure there were websites. There may have been a few, sadly, but because the website is used for a number of different reasons, okay? But for you, it's an invaluable resource. My other top tips, there are 2, Chambers and Partners and Legal 500, for example, and there will be others, are also really good bar directories. They'll be in the Inns libraries. They will give you information about practice areas, okay? So look at the work that they do, look at what the junior tenants do, look at the set of chambers generally. Right, interview questions, okay? So, why the bar? So if I was to ask any of you, what are the first few things that come into your mind? Why the bar? Even if you're not going to answer orally, I'll leave that for you to think about, okay? Make sure you've got a good answer. Why chambers? Then the competency questions, okay? That's going to be looking at the way you think. Topical questions. So they make sure you are up to date in the most recent areas of the law in that practice area, because almost certainly, in my view, you're going to be asked about that. So what you don't want is for you to have done brilliantly about why that set of chambers, why you're motivated to go to the bar. They ask you a topical question in that practice area and you've never heard of what they're talking about. Okay? Again, it's obvious, isn't it? But make sure you're up to date. Legal problems, there might be legal problems in round 1, okay? And then there might be scenario questions. My biggest tip is be yourself. Do not pretend to be somebody else. Be proud of the person that you are, okay? Because they will want you to join. I remember all those years ago, there were no lawyers in my family. I remember when I applied to be at the bar, it was a very unknown quantity for me. I remember walking into the Inns for the first time and feeling it was this enormous unknown place. Was I going to fit in? But the best piece of advice I had was be yourself, because the beauty of the bar is it is for, in my view, everybody. Okay, you will have great things to say about yourself. You've just got to make sure that they hear it. Okay? Right, round 2. You've all been amazing. You've got through to round 2. Marvellous. Now, this tends to be a little bit different. I mean, again, look at the sets of chambers. A little bit different. They're not all the same. So don't fall into that trap. If you're lucky enough to have a whole series of second round interviews, that is fantastic. You'll be busy preparing. But look, some sets simply say, right, turn up. And you will either be given perhaps an advocacy exercise or a problem exercise to prepare for. Okay, so have a bit of a think about answering problem questions, reading for the last minute, your particular area of law, make sure you know the law. So for example, in my practice area in a criminal set, it might be making a bail application. So reading a set of facts quite quickly, get used to doing that, okay? Method 2, some chambers will ask for a written exercise, okay? But what you will want to do is find out in advance what it involves. Okay? Even if the website doesn't say, by the time you're offered a second round interview, really make sure you've asked that question. Okay? It's exactly as the same adage as going to court. Preparation, preparation, preparation. Okay? Really, really important. So, in the interview room, you'll be thinking on your feet, will you not? My best tip is do not fill the silence for the sake of filling the silence. Okay? Because, not speaking for all of you, but speaking for me, if I do that whilst I'm thinking, the chances are what I'm saying isn't going to be as articulate as if I'd given it a moment. And trust me, you'll all have to get used to being in court and having to pause and getting comfortable with silence. When you all go to do the BTC, that will be one of the biggest tips that you'll be given, okay? So, think about it. And if you need a minute, just say, I need a moment. Can you give me a moment to think about that? And the interview panel will sit up and think, oh gosh, actually, that is a very good approach, rather than just saying the first thing that comes into your head. And then be succinct, be helpful, which I'm sure you will be polite, okay? And support it with an answer, okay? So when you answer, make sure you support it with, whatever it might be, evidence, statute, common law, and guess what? Look at the end, common sense. Some answers in interview just might be your intuition. You will need as a skill, if you haven't got it already, and I'm sure you have, is backing your own judgment. Okay? Because in court, that's what you'll need to do. All right? That's not about not being accountable, but use your common sense. Okay? So as part of your planning, either in advance or in the preparation room, get yourself a structure. Get yourself some bullet points. Okay? Things that you really want to make sure you cover when you're in the interview room, because they're bound, we've all been in interviews, I'm sure, whatever it's for, when our mind's gone blank. Have a few trigger points for yourself, so that if, for example, you have a moment where your mind has gone blank, there you are, you've got your list. And then listen to what you're being asked. Active listening, okay? Pause, and when they ask you the question, make sure you listen to the question. That sounds obvious, doesn't it? Okay, and obviously, if you've misunderstood the question or haven't heard it, please ask, for a question to be repeated. It's really important to listen to the question, as you will in court, for example. Listen to the question, digest it, okay? And answer comprehensively, but go back to the top, not at real length. You want to be succinct and helpful, okay? So, ethics. They are everywhere. Now, particularly it says the criminal bar and the family bar, by no means exclusively. What you should expect if you're applying to a set of chambers in a scenario question is there'll be an ethical element to it. And what I mean by an ethical element is how you would deal with a particular set of circumstances ethically. What's the right thing to do? Okay? So bear in mind that ethics will come, as likely to be an ethical element to the question. Okay? And so when you're looking through your problem question, you might want to be saying to yourself, hang on a second, the chances are there's an ethical issue here. Okay? And it will ring an alarm bell, because it will say there'll be something in the problem that will make you think, oh, actually, that's making the integrity bell in my head ring. Oh, that doesn't feel quite right. Okay? So you'll want to look for that in the problem question. And brush up on the code of conduct. Okay? So there are the main tenets under the code of conduct. Download the BSB handbook. Okay? You're going to have to, if you've not been on the bar course already, you'll be studying ethics. And again, certainly at BPP, and I'm sure other providers, the ethical questions are woven into the scenarios you're given, so you get used to spotting it. Okay? So that's a big tip. Get the code of conduct and have it in your head that there's going to be an ethical element to the question. Okay? So this is a little about BPP, but you'll see other providers here. BPP graduates have secured more pupillage and barrister chambers than any other provider. There's some stats you'll see from the date there between 2014 and 2019. But do, as I've said, speak to the other providers who are here today. So we've just got a few events coming up. Okay, if you're particularly interested in looking at BPP events, we've got an event on the 6th of December. There's a virtual open evening. That's for all law programmes. Okay, we've got a stand here which you'll be at the end of the room. You'll be able to come and see us there. Personal open days are available. We've got the Bridging the Bar programme, and there are other events you'll be able to see. Any queries, law outreach at bpp.com.